Welcome to Beyond Rent, the property management podcast brought to you by Rent Manager. Each episode, we sit down with an expert to talk industry updates, tech solutions, and top tips for those in the property management space. And now, let's get to the conversation and go Beyond Rent.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Beyond Rent. Rising costs and tighter margins make it feel like the market is the enemy. But for most property managers, the real threat is internal inefficiency, quietly draining profit every day. So in this episode, we have Jay from Better Who joining us to break down how this is happening, where people, process, and AI fit into the solution here. So Jay, welcome to Beyond Rent.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Joe.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming out and visiting us today here in Cincinnati to record this episode because we were just talking about the impact of AI, but what people really need to focus on and how to use it and some of the things they need to do ahead of time. So I'm really excited about today's conversation because I think people really need to hear this and understand what are the right next steps for their business as it relates to all of the things that are people, process, and AI. But before we talk about that, let's get to know you a little bit better. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So Jay Betterby, and I'm one of the co-founders at Better Who. What we do is we help build self-managing teams. We help fix the operational inefficiencies so that property management companies can scale.
And that really is what it's all about at the end of the day, right? People that come to you, they're wanting to scale, but they haven't gotten to the point where they can scale yet. And when I think about scale, a lot of it actually does come down to this idea of like efficiency, right? Processes and things like that. So I kind of led with it talking about where a lot of people think that maybe their business struggles are tied to market conditions, which are always changing and are volatile at times. But you don't actually think it's the market. You think there's other things that they could be doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the market is always a factor, especially right now. We're seeing higher vacancies, more competition, right? So these things are always going to fluctuate, and we're not necessarily in the best place for that right now. And then we have regulations on how much we can charge, right? How do we charge it? We have to stay on top of local laws. So we have all of these external pressures, but a lot of our profit loss is actually happening internally through operational inefficiency. So the way that we used to look at profit used to be how much we can charge or what does it cost to deliver that service, right? Income and expenses. Now I challenge you to start thinking about your profit through the lens of people efficiency and process efficiency.
All right, so break that down for me. People efficiency, process efficiency. Obviously, the people are using the processes, but you separate those out for very specific reasons, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting, just over the course of the past couple of years, looking at the data, the average worker wastes 25% of their day. So one of the reports I was reading lately, a McKinsey report, 1.8 hours per day, the average team member is looking for information. So whether someone's spending time, and I see you nodding your head too, you're like, yeah, I see this, right? I hear this. But whether someone's looking for information, waiting on information from someone else, or just that context switching, right? You go from email to doing this other thing, right? To having to go out in the field. All of this is wasted productivity and efficiency. So it's not necessarily that you have the wrong people, but it's the fact that they're not set up for success.
Yeah, it definitely was nodding my head because I think we all feel that pain of lost time, right? As we're trying to get through our day, we're trying to solve things. The amount of back and forth that happens, trying to get a relatively simple answer or decision made can be challenging. So that exists out there. And I think people, and sometimes we kind of just accept it, right? Saying, well, this is just how it is. We're just going to try to maximize their efforts outside of that 25%. But that's not really the way you're looking at it. You think we can attack that 25% and get some of that back?
Yeah, because I actually think that 25% is low, especially in property management, because we have most of our team members that are local staff, right, historically, and we have them having to switch from doing a desk job to going out in the field to following up on process tasks, if they even have processes implemented. And I think it's more like 40% in property management. And I absolutely know for a fact that that can be significantly reduced when you have the right setup.
And the right setup is that process, right? So process efficiency. Are people even measuring that today as far as like how effective are their processes, or could their processes be more streamlined? Because I'd imagine that's what you're referring to, right? You may have a process, but it's just bloated. It's too much.
Correct. Fact is, most companies don't, because like we were talking before, a lot of people want to just automate everything. Well, first of all, what happens when you automate the wrong thing or an incomplete thing? So you do not jump to automation, just like you don't jump right to AI as an answer. But instead, we have to look at how we're doing business. What are our policies? So for example, if we have to have a standardized resident selection criteria, correct? We can't just make exceptions and say, hey, what did Sally do in this situation? Like, it needs to be documented and we need to follow those policies. How much do we charge when rent is late? When is rent considered late? Like, all of the different policy areas in your company, those first need to be documented before you can then move on to documenting your process. That's where the process, the structure starts.
So get policy in place, which I'd have to think most people have most of that done, right? When is the rent late? How much is a late fee? Those things. I'm very concerned if people don't kind of have their application and applicant process outlined because of fair housing and things that can be involved there. Those are really important. But I'd imagine if you get to that point, that for a lot of people that seems obvious, do those. But getting the actual process part is really challenging because of the way that we see a lot of property management companies grow. And you have a lot of experience here because you've done this, right? You've had your own property management company. You've scaled a property management company. The way that they grow doesn't always provide the space and the time to go back and revisit those things. Is that something you'd agree with?
I would agree with that, yes. But let me go back and elaborate on policies because I want to challenge the fact that most companies don't have all their policies documented. We've worked with hundreds of property management companies, and yes, some of the standard policies are documented, but let's look at owner onboarding. Do we accept tenant-occupied properties? If so, what documentation do we need to have in place when we bring them on? What forms do we need them to fill out, right? Like, there's all of these other policies in our business that most people aren't paying attention to. And usually what happens is that lives in people's heads. It lives in the business owner's head, or it lives in Sally or John's head. And this is why many companies struggle to get past that 300 or 350 door mark. Now, when I first started, I went from 0 to 350 in 2 years. I grew very fast. Well, I had to unwind a lot of that because I made a lot of mistakes. And like, this happens with most companies.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And it's great that you realized that and you did that unwinding to go back and fix things. But it's great to point out that, yes, you can scale fast, but at some point you're going to hit a wall of inefficiency. And I really do like that you went back and revisited the policy piece, because I think in my mind, it was like, well, the important policies are in place. But what you're saying is like, no, all of the policies need to be in place because you're touching these things on a regular basis. And just because so-and-so knows what to do when that comes around, that's not good enough anymore.
What happens when so-and-so goes on vacation or they get hit by a bus, right? God forbid. Like, and what happens when we're talking about operational inefficiency, having to go ask so-and-so for the answer, right? These things, that's what we call tribal knowledge. And we need to get that tribal knowledge documented. And it's not as hard as many people think, but they want to skip that step and move to the next thing because that's kind of boring, right? And also most companies don't know where to start because they're not thinking of all the different policy areas in their business. And that's part of the initiative that we've really been working towards at Better Who, to help property managers first take that step while they're building a strong team.
And that's a solid point there as well, because people probably just need help to kind of think about things a little bit deeper, get that tribal knowledge out of people's heads and put it on paper. And it's not as much fun, right? When we think about automation and AI, that sounds tech forward, that sounds fun. It sounds like the things that we want to be doing. Documenting policy and process, that sounds very boring.
That it's not sexy.
So how do you, when you're working with these companies, how do you really push them to go back and do that? Because I'd imagine the first thing when they come to Better Who, that they're like, oh, great, we want to bring you guys on and you're going to help us automate. You're going to help us with AI. And the first thing you say is, sorry, we're going back to the basics here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when most people come to us, they think that they want one thing, but typically what we find out is that once we diagnose and we do an initial audit and we put together some of their numbers for them to see, and we look at what we call the 4 pillars: team, system, profit, and growth, and in that order, then they want to go to growth. But if they're not running a profitable company, then why grow doors? Because you're only growing problems. You're growing more operational chaos, unprofitable doors. So we have to go back to the profit step. But then, like we're talking about the systems, right? And the documenting the policies and the processes, but it all starts with the team. It starts with having the right people in the right seats. So that's typically where we first start. And that's how we first started as a company. My business partner, he was, years ago, he had some people working for him in India, and he said, hey, you know what? Other property managers could use this too, because I'm getting labor at a much, a lot lower of a cost. And so he did that for a couple of other companies, and I saw what he was doing, and I'm like, we need to put a process behind that. So that's how we started. We placed thousands of remote team members, virtual assistants from all over the world. And most of these people have doctorate degrees, right? They are very intelligent and well-educated. If I asked you, how much do you think a doctor makes in El Salvador?
Oh, I wouldn't know where to start, but I'm going to say 25% of what one makes here, and they're like sub $50,000.
And that would be great if they were making that much. They make $17,000, the average doctor. So now imagine you can pay someone who is extremely intelligent, process and system oriented, and you can pay them, say, $12 an hour. And now they're the core person who is documenting all of your systems and policies in your business. Because when you have when you have the right person in the right seat, then you can start building.
Yeah, it's so smart to start with that team and revisit it. And I have to ask, when you're looking at the team and you said, the right person in the right seat, how often do people not even have the right seats? Meaning they don't even have the right roles defined. They're really just kind of plugging people in where they see pain.
Yeah. So how do I answer that one? We typically see that, and this is normal, right? Like a lot of companies go to this, they'll just hire for the problem, and they don't take the step of defining what is the actual role that I need. So something I learned a few years ago from one of our clients is that instead of looking at process implementation as who is in the seat, right? Look at it as role specific. So that's when we started getting really heavy on accountability charts and helping property management companies build those out with responsibilities matrix, right? Because everybody has to know who owns what. Because if nobody knows who owns what, then nobody owns anything.
Yeah, and I think that is so obvious to some people and so core to running a business, that accountability, that ownership piece. But again, when you're trying to scale a business and you're just trying to get through the day, grinding things out. You don't always look at it that way. And you had mentioned that profitability piece and why would you grow something that's not profitable? I also think there's a little bit, especially in the single family market, maybe more than, other rental markets that we work with, that there's this theory that, well, I'll be profitable when I get to X number of doors, right? And there's some truth to that, right? If you're running a really small operation, you probably need to get some volume before you can realize some profitability. But they kind of chase this number when the reality is they could be profitable where they're at. They just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. You and I, we were talking before the recording started about my days growing to my first 500 doors. And I had no clue. I didn't know I needed help from, an outside company. I did not know what I was making. I didn't know what my profit was. I didn't know what the benchmarks were. I didn't know what other people were doing. So, revenue per unit or profit per unit, I used to bake in my property management revenue and my sales revenue because I did real estate brokerage as well. I never had them separate for the first few years. So it's very difficult to see how much you're actually making when you're in it. And that's why it helps so much to have a third party, because you're just doing the things and you need to know if you're doing the right things and how do you measure that.
Yeah, because you want to scale things that are worthwhile and profitable, right? You don't want to scale a business that's losing money to lose even more money. That's a losing proposition there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more because you talked about the team, you talked about the systems, but right away people are quick to jump in and talk about AI right now. And it reminds me, and we've talked about this before we hit the record button. It reminds me of the way that people talked about automation 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? That people jump right in that, well, we're just going to use AI to take care of the business and make us scalable, make us more efficient. What are you seeing around that discussion right now?
It's a massive distraction. AI for the most case. I started speaking nationally on AI and property management when it first came out. I made it my business partially because I knew it was a smart move, but more so I'm a geek to efficiency and I knew AI could help get there, even just in my personal life. So I was really interested by it. But yeah, over the course of the past 3 years, there was all of this excitement at first, but now people are bored hearing about AI. And I don't blame them because they've tried something and it didn't work or it changed or they didn't know where to start. It's so much information, and a lot of the people that are actually leading and speaking about it to them, they're not giving them the right information. They're giving them this high-level fluff of what AI can do, right? It's okay, let's look at how to successfully implement AI, because AI is a tool. It's not a thing. It's not a mystery, right? It's just another tool. And it's the most powerful tool that you can have in your business if you know how to use it.
I love that you use the word distraction because there is so much talk about AI. And I love it. I'm kind of like you. I love to kind of dive in and learn these things and learn how people are going to use it. But it can be a really big distraction when you think it's somehow just going to solve all of your problems. When I look into the future, I think AI will just be kind of in the background. Everyone knows it's there. It's a tool that's being used, but we're not there yet. And it still takes quite a bit of effort from what I'm seeing to really get AI to perform things outside of a very, very specific use case, right? It almost seems like you have to kind of boil it down and say, I'm going to use AI right here, right in this spot here. And that works really well, but you can't just let it loose, right? I don't think we're anywhere close to that at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So, totally agree. I mean, and honestly, what would let it loose look like, right? It's there's certain tools and certain workflows that you can have in place, and you can keep it very simple, right? One of the things that we help people put together is your AI company playbook. Just a one-pager. What's high risk? What's low risk? What are the tools we use? And does everybody need to be using the same tool and the same login? Yeah, right? It's like any other system in your business. You can't have 6 different people using ChatGPT accounts and that's just a very rudimentary example, but everybody has to be on the same page, and there has to be a cadence in place. Because if it's just like, say you come home from a conference, right, the business owner, and you tell your team, hey, we're going to implement these 3-4 things because I met all these great vendors and they're so cool, and we're going to switch these softwares. And now your team's like, oh man, Jay, slow down. It's the same thing with AI. We have to implement it strategically, and strategically means that we don't give up on the conversation. So if you have daily huddles with your team, you need to include that, right? How are we using AI today? When you have leadership meetings, you need to have the conversation intentional. Every 90 days, you need to revisit how you're using AI. But what I always warn people is that you need to just start with the right first step and keep it simple. Don't go diving down rabbit holes because it will be a distraction. I can't say that enough, trust me.
No, it's such an interesting topic. And again, I like the idea of AI, but what you even said about creating that playbook, I know most companies do not have anything close to that. And what's, I think, interesting about AI is the fact that there are so many tools out there that are just publicly available. There are free versions and so forth. So what that means is a lot of people are just out there using AI tools outside of company approval, outside of company awareness, and they're using it for simple things. They're helping document or create emails and communication pieces, things like that, that appear to be low risk. But to your point is, well, at what point does it become high risk? Because somebody figures out how to use AI to do email responses, and maybe somebody wants to just automate that piece. And then all of a sudden letting it loose looks like AI communicating directly with residents without any oversight. Well, that is high risk. That's actually very dangerous at this stage.
Yeah. Also, like, think of, say, even just using it in your marketing description, but then it starts citing laws, like new laws, but it's just making them up because you have somebody on your team that doesn't know how to use the tool. So, and then there's other high risk areas too, that, like, if, creating a new legal document for you, right? It's like, no, we don't create legal documents. Do not create a pet addendum with AI just because we don't have a pet addendum yet. You know what I mean? But yeah, having a standardized little playbook, which is just, it can just be 5 sections of how we use AI, how we communicate about it, and also what are the approved tools.
Yeah, that approved tools piece I think is really important. So that's really interesting to me as far as like where that'll evolve and how people will use it. It is a great tool. So, like I said, it's a very powerful tool, but like anything where there's a lot of power, there can be a lot of risk.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that every company only needs 2 or 3 tools. That's it, 2 or 3 tools. And there's a lot of different types of tools, I should say. And there's a lot of different ways to solve the problem, just like there's tons of different softwares to solve different problems. But every company only needs to use 2 or 3 different types of tools.
So what categories would you put those tools in? If you're saying there's only 2 or 3, I'm assuming they kind of fall into buckets.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of them would be a tool like Loom AI, for example. And Loom, you record a video. All right, so back when I was doing everything wrong in my property management company, I had this great idea. I said, you know what? When I train someone, I don't want to train people over and over again to do the same thing. So I'm like, I'm just going to record it. So I would record myself training them, and now I have this hour-long recording. Nobody's going back and watching that. So that time that I spent doing that and then putting it into a Google Drive, even though it was organized, nobody's going back and looking at that. Kind of like if you have a company manual, right? A 350-page company manual. It doesn't matter if you have that. Nobody's going to look at it. So you need things that are going to make that easier. So Loom AI, for example, will do that screen recording, and then it will turn everything that you just did into a step-by-step. So documenting your procedures as you go. Screenshot, AI then tells you exactly what you did, shows where you clicked on it, and it creates these things that now are becoming a training library. So you have a new team member that comes on board, and now you have this documented SOP training library that they can access at any time. Take it to the next step, document information retrieval, okay? So let's talk about the company brain if we can. So documenting the knowledge. So we talked about policies and procedures, okay? So Loom AI can document the procedures. We created a tool to document the policies, Better Who did. And then you have your processes, right? All of this information needs to live in one place. So that company manual I was telling you about before, that 350-page company manual, if that lives in one AI, then anybody on your team can ask that AI. Ask your AI instead of having to find John or Betty and wait for their answers, right? So this is just one of the steps at improving that operational efficiency.
Yeah, so many great nuggets of information there. I want to go back to your point about creating training videos or 350-page company policy handbooks and things like that, and the fact that people don't go and use those resources. As much as we try, there is just this human element that's just necessary in certain things. Training is one of them, right? I experienced it with meetings, right? You could write the best agenda for a meeting, send it out ahead of time. You show up and you look around the room. Who read the agenda? Nobody read the agenda. They want to show up and they want to hear it. They want to talk about it. They want to interact with it. And I think that's really powerful about kind of that training that you talk about. But there are tools like, it sounds like Loom is a great one that makes it a little more interactive. So it is more powerful. It is more useful and it breaks it down into, more meaningful portions. And then that resource and documentation and ability to use AI for the pieces like that. I just think that's where AI is the most useful, at least at its current stage, is getting answers quickly that are specific to your company and how you want to operate. So you've written the 350 pages. No one has memorized it, but what you can do is use AI to pull the information out of it and give quick answers so people don't have to spend hours researching what to do, right? It can surface things really quickly. I'm really excited about that piece, but it's not the public-facing ChatGPT that we're talking about here. We're talking about an internal tool that has access to your information.
Absolutely. Your AI company brain. And it's not as complicated as you think, right? So it starts with hiring the right AI who. And you might have this person on your team already, right? But we talked about somebody needs to own everything, including AI. So if you don't have that person, you can hire a remote team member who might be that doctor from El Salvador that now you're paying $12 an hour, and they can end up implementing AI, be your AI who, and your integrator or your ops manager for your entire company. High value position. But without the high cost attached to it. And we have case studies on how that type of hire transforms businesses. What was the question again, Joe? Oh, wait, no, hold on. I know. I'm going back. So you hire the AI, and when I get excited about this stuff, right, you can tell. So you go back to hiring the AI who. That's the first part. The second part is they start collecting the knowledge for the brain, okay? So they have to extract the company policies, okay? And they can use Betty, they can use our AI tool to do that, or they can just identify what those policies are and shadow the different people on the team, right? And just start working in that direction. And there's the policies, and then there's all of your company documents that you have already. Resident selection criteria, your PMAs, your leases, right? Just all of the things you use, owner FAQs, tenant FAQs. Now, all of those, imagine all of that stuff in one database, okay? We use Notion AI, and I think that is the absolute best tool because it plugs into all of the other LLMs and large learning LLMs, like ChatGPTs and large language models, excuse me. But yeah, plugs into all of those other tools as well, searches the internet, but first searches your company knowledge for the answer.
Yeah, and I'm glad you walked us all the way through that. And, the LLMs and everything, like what's so funny, even about you, like trying to come up with an acronym, like there's so many acronyms out there anymore about all these things. I think that intimidates some people, but like you said, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. There are tools out there that allow you to plug in your data. It uses other information as well to create these environments where people can get quick answers, right? Because when we go all the way back to the start of our conversation, we talked about scalability, right? Well, to scale, you need people that are doing the right thing and they're doing it quickly, right? That's really important at some point, that you can move quick, but quickly doing the right thing. And these are really tools that allow you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, if not, you're going to get stuck at the trap of 250 to 500 doors, which is the lowest profitability size of a mid-market PM company. And you might not even know it. You might not even know how much you're losing. And if you cannot break through that size unless you have the right people in the right seats, and if you have some efficiencies in place, and this is the easiest way to start.
And because what we're really talking about is this combination of the right people in the right seat, using the right tools, the right systems to lead to that profitability and get over that hump.
Absolutely.
So I've got it written down here, this idea of having a battle plan, that you had sent us this idea of like, well, how are you going to go out and actually create an efficient company that also is using AI, right? Because AI isn't this solution that's going to fix everything, but it is part of the solution.
Yeah, it is. And AI, like we were saying before, it's a tool, so when and what do you use that tool for? So yeah, the battle plan is actually very simple, right? It's hiring the AI who, or identifying who owns it, okay? And then once they do, they document the knowledge in the company. They get it all into one place. So now people can get those instant answers. They don't have to ask for everyone. And then step 3, just putting together that playbook. Just what are the rules of the game? What are the logins? That kind of stuff. And then step 4 and 5 is really just if you have a few of your company's favorite prompts, right? Or something like that, you can have that information segmented. But I would say you don't even need that step. You just have to make it intentional, make it a flywheel where you're talking about AI in your company meetings, making sure that you're revisiting it. You have KPIs that you're tracking in your company so that you can measure the success, celebrate the wins, adjust as necessary.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for walking us through those steps, because we've talked about all of those pieces, but not collectively in one quick list like that, because I think what you built out really makes sense. And it's taking this mystery of AI and all of the research and distraction that we've talked about and making it really approachable and saying, this is where AI can actually help you today, right now, actionable. Let's stop being high level and talking about what it could do, what it might do, and actually talk about what it does, because you're doing this right now with customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do part of one of our services is the Who Crew, and this is a community where we have masterminds and group coaching and resources. And surprise, but I lead the AI mastermind. And typically that we do that more like a workshop rather than a mastermind, because it's just very new for most companies. And I'll bring to the table, like, say, a master prompt of, okay, one of the things that we know is that the most important part of the customer journey is the owner onboarding process. Right? This is when we've made a promise and now we have to deliver on it. And for most companies, that's a big bottleneck. That's a big issue, right? Like we're seeing when people start working with us, they have a lot of owners that are walking out the door in the first 30, 60, 90 days. So I came up with a prompt that you can copy and paste, and then it'll show you the entire customer journey from owner onboarding. When do you hand it off? What are the messages that need to be communicated? What are the main pain points that they're experiencing, right? So like it's solutions like these that you can get at your fingertips when you have the right answers or the right people around you. Because that's one of the dangers, right? It's like there's so much noise. Everybody's fighting for your attention. Who do you pay attention to?
Oh, absolutely. And you even mentioned, and we work with a lot of the AI suppliers and vendors out there, so I'm not saying this in a negative way, but there's so many choices, right? And they're all trying to sell their product. They're all trying to get it in front of you that you really do need to focus down and make a decision on how you're going to implement this. And you talk about that owner onboarding piece. And it's so interesting because when I talk to companies, and it doesn't matter if they're PM companies or if they are tech companies, I actually think one of the areas that most people can improve is the onboarding. And I don't know if I've met anyone that's mastered it because it is so important to the future success of that client, that owner, whoever it is. If that onboarding isn't smooth, isn't productive, and doesn't give that person confidence that you're the right solution, they're probably going to leave. They're probably going to leave relatively quickly because that's really was your opportunity. But like you said, most people don't have that figured out today. And I don't say that out of criticism. I say that out of opportunity, that those that figure it out, I think will be the ones that continue to win. And it sounds like AI fits right into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about the cost operationally. Like what happens when you have a poor owner onboarding process? They're likely to leave sooner, right? They're also likely to complain more, right? Because they don't trust you right out of the gate. And what do we say about first impressions, right? They're so important. So all of these things equals dollars out of your pockets. Because how does that even affect your team? So there's just so much more to it that lies underneath. But it does, the owner onboarding process is so critical.
So critical. And I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know there are stats out there that talk about the resident experience, that if you have a poor move-in experience, which is onboarding, right? If you have a poor move-in experience, you will submit more maintenance requests and are less likely to renew. Right out of the gate, right? That onboarding, that move-in process for the resident is important. The owner, think about staffing, right? If you don't onboard a new employee well, the same thing. They will lack trust that this is actually the right place that they should be, and it creates a poor employee experience. It's across the board. So I think that's so powerful. Well, as we kind of turn the corner towards the end of the episode, Jay, I really want to spend some time diving into Better Who a little bit more. We've talked a lot about the right people, the right seat, using AI, all of these things that are so powerful. And I know your company really is built to walk alongside property management companies to help solve for these. So tell me more about Better Who, what you've been up to recently, kind of what's new and exciting in your world.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, most people from years ago knew us as a staffing solution because we hire and place virtual assistants, remote team members directly with a company, which puts you in direct control, right? You don't have a middleman like a staffing agency, and essentially global headhunting. So we help place anywhere from maintenance coordinators, leasing specialists, general admin, all the way to integrators, marketing directors. Like we have 20 people on our team and 17 of them live out of country. And we're a growing company, right? It's like we have a philosophy: desk jobs are desk jobs and field jobs are field jobs. And a desk job can be done from anywhere in the world. So that's how we really built our company. But over the years, we've started doing a lot more one-on-one coaching. We've started implementing consulting. Better Team Consulting is what we call it, because my business partner, he used to be an EOS implementer, the entrepreneurial operating system, which focuses on right people, right seats, having strategic meetings, because if not, we're just in a bunch of meetings and everything's a meeting. You just walk down the hallway and you start talking to somebody for 20 minutes. And then there's nothing standardized. Accountability charts, implementing KPIs, some of these mysteries that are really the foundation, like we're talking about, with operational efficiency. So we do that in the right steps. That's a done with you, done for you approach, because most companies don't know where to start. So we really come in and help you build that out. And we have, other products and services that are related to those things. But what I'm most excited about is something that we've been building over the past couple of years, which is our company brain, all of the decades of property management specific knowledge, right? Property management specific knowledge all in one place, that we have built our own AI for property managers. And her name is Betty Who. So our company's Better Who, she's Betty Who. And Betty is your AI coach. So she has multiple functions, but essentially think of ChatGPT, but very specific to property management and everything that you do in your business. She's a coach. So she will help build those operational efficiencies. She's a huge tool for us, but super effective for our clients. She'll walk you through and ask you all of the questions that she needs to ask you in order to document your policies. You don't have your policies in place? Don't worry. Betty will ask you all of the questions. And then she'll even serve as that company brain repository so that your team, instead of just asking John, they can just ask Betty.
Yeah, I'm glad you're working on tools like that, because that is the nuance. That is the specific type of tool set that really AI has to evolve into, right? We've all messed with ChatGPT, and it might be fun and interesting. It might produce some decent results in certain scenarios, but until it knows you and until it knows your industry, it's just giving you random information off the internet, right? Repackaged in a way that's personable. And that's not always the right answer. And we need things that are specific. So that's really exciting. And I love how clever your team is with the whole who phrasing and everything that you do. I think that's a lot of fun. Well, that's great. So you're doing a lot with AI. You're doing a lot with the staffing. And I love how you talked about the evolution of your company, that you're still doing those pieces and helping out with the staffing, but it's so much more than what it was just a few years ago. So obviously we appreciate the fact that you continue to evolve and support the industry in new and exciting ways, because we are growing. There's going to be more opportunity out there, and these PMs really, really need some help along the way to make sure that they're profitable and scalable and just really, really good places to work as well. Jay, any last thoughts on the whole topic of today? The war on profits. We talked about how efficiency inside your building, inside your company is so much more important than what's happening in the market, and building kind of that scalable, efficient business. Any last thoughts on what PMs should be doing for their next step, right? If they're listening to this and they're like, well, Jay's right, but I don't know what to do next. What's the right next step?
The right next step is go to betterwho.com/AI, and you'll find Betty Coach, and Betty she's your property management specific AI, right? She's going to be someone who you can ask questions to. She'll put you in touch with us, but Betty Who. So go to betterwho.com/AI.
Excellent. Well, Jay, we'll be for sure to put some links in the show notes for that, as well as if people want to connect with you directly, we can drop some links in there as well. Well, I really appreciate your time today. This is a great topic. I have all these notes, new ideas that I've written down as we've talked, because you're so wealth of knowledge and experience in the industry, and really value your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joe. We love this industry and we love our clients, so it's great stuff.
Yeah, it really shows. Well, thanks again for taking some time with me today, and thank you to our audience for joining us for this episode. And until next time, keep going beyond rent.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Beyond Rent. If you enjoyed this podcast, spread the word on social media and with your peers in the industry. To be notified when more episodes are released, subscribe using your favorite podcast player. Beyond Rent is brought to you by Rent Manager Property Management Software. Learn more about Rent Manager's industry-leading software solutions at rentmanager.com. Until next time, keep going beyond rent.